The hearing had been scheduled for 3 weeks, and everyone in Washington knew it was going to be explosive. The House Select Committee investigating January 6th had subpoenaed Donald Trump to testify under oath about his knowledge of the planning and execution of the Capitol attack. Trump had fought the subpoena all the way to the Supreme Court and lost. So, on a cold Thursday morning in November, he arrived at the Cannon caucus room flanked by 7 attorneys, 2 private security guards, and a press secretary who'd spent the previous evening briefing friendly media outlets that this was pure political theater by a weaponized Congress. Trump entered at 9:47 a.m., 13 minutes late. Chairman Benny Thompson had already gavelled the hearing to order, and the room was packed beyond capacity. Every seat in the press gallery was filled. Overflow crowds watched on monitors in 3 separate committee rooms. Trump took his seat at the witness table with the deliberate slowness of someone who'd testified before Congress twice before and understood that everything about his posture would be analyzed. He wore a dark blue suit, American flag pin on his lapel, red tie perfectly knotted. His expression conveyed what it always conveyed, total confidence that this was a waste of his time and everyone in the room knew it. Chairman Thompson began with the standard oath administration. Trump raised his right hand and swore to tell the truth with the same tone someone might use to confirm their coffee order. When Thompson finished the opening statement about the committee's mandate and the seriousness of the constitutional questions at stake, Trump leaned into his microphone without being recognized. Mr. Chairman, I just want to say for the record that I'm here because I respect the rule of law even when I think the law is being abused for political purposes. I've said from day one that January 6th was a protest that got out of hand. I condemned the violence immediately. I told people to go home peacefully, and now I'm sitting here answering questions from a committee that has ignored mountains of evidence about FBI informants in the crowd, Capitol Police who opened doors, and the real story about what happened that day. He gestured broadly toward the Democratic side of the dais. You've spent 2 years trying to blame me for something I had nothing to do with. You've ignored Pelosi's security failures. You've ignored the fact that I authorized 10,000 National Guard troops and was turned down. You've built an entire narrative based on edited video clips and anonymous sources. But I'm here under oath, ready to answer your questions because unlike some people in this town, I have nothing to hide. 3 Republicans on the committee applauded. Representative Liz Cheney, sitting at the far end of the Republican section, did not. Chairman Thompson banged the gavel once and recognized himself for questioning. The first 20 minutes were procedural, establishing Trump's location on January 6th, his communications with staff, his awareness of the violence as it unfolded. Trump answered each question with variations of the same response. He was in the White House. He was monitoring the situation. He put out statements calling for peace. He was shocked by the violence and condemned it immediately. At 10:31 a.m., Chairman Thompson yielded his remaining time to Vice Chair Liz Cheney, who asked 3 pointed questions about why it took Trump 187 minutes to release a video telling people to leave the Capitol. Trump's lead attorney objected twice on grounds of relevance. Cheney pressed forward anyway. Trump responded that he'd been consulting with legal counsel and security officials and that he released the statement as soon as he felt it would be effective. At 10:52 a.m., Chairman Thompson recognized Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett for her time. She was seated in the middle of the Democratic section, a closed laptop in front of her and a small black leather portfolio to her left. She'd been absolutely still during the first hour of testimony, taking no notes, showing no reaction to anything Trump said. When the chairman spoke her name, she opened the laptop with a soft click and looked at Trump for the first time. Mr. Trump, thank you for being here today. I know this has already been a long morning, so I'll try to be direct. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. I want to focus on a specific window of time between the evening of January 5th and the morning of January 6th. Approximately 18 hours? Can you tell me where you were during that period? Trump glanced at his attorney, who nodded. I was at the White House. I had meetings scheduled throughout the day on January 5th. I had dinner with family. I worked late into the evening. I went to bed, woke up on the morning of the 6th, and prepared for the rally at the Ellipse. You didn't leave the White House at any point during those 18 hours? No. You didn't meet with anyone outside your immediate staff and family? Trump shifted slightly in his seat. I meet with a lot of people, Congresswoman. If you're asking about something specific, maybe you should just ask it. Crockett's expression didn't change. I'm asking if you met with Roger Stone on the evening of January 5th. The room temperature seemed to drop 5 degrees instantly. Trump's lead attorney leaned forward. Congresswoman, Roger Stone is a private citizen who has not been charged with any crime related to January 6th. Any questions about his activities are outside the scope of... Crockett raised one hand slightly. I'm not asking about Mr. Stone's activities. I'm asking if President Trump met with him on January 5th. She turned back to Trump. Did you? Trump's jaw tightened. Roger Stone is a longtime political associate. I've known him for 40 years. If I saw him at some point during that time period, it was a brief social conversation. Nothing to do with January 6th. So you did see him? I may have. I don't specifically remember. Like I said, I see a lot of people. Crockett made a small notation on her laptop. Let me help you remember. At 8:47 p.m. on January 5th, Roger Stone entered the White House through the East Wing entrance. Secret Service logs show him signing in at 8:47 and signing out at 10:23 p.m. That's 1 hour and 36 minutes. Does that refresh your memory about whether you met with him? Trump's attorney was writing frantically. Trump himself had gone very still. If the logs say he was there, then he was there. I don't remember the specific conversation, but there's nothing unusual about me meeting with political advisors. Of course not. Crockett opened the black leather portfolio and removed a single sheet of paper. The Secret Service logs show that Mr. Stone went directly to the Oval Office dining room. That's the small private dining room adjacent to the Oval Office where you typically took dinner meetings. Is that correct? That's where I meet with people sometimes, yes. Who else was in that meeting? Trump looked at his attorney. I don't recall specifically who was there. It was 2 years ago. Crockett turned to the next page in her portfolio. Secret Service logs show 3 people entering the dining room that evening. Roger Stone at 8:47 p.m. Michael Flynn at 8:52 p.m. and a third individual whose name is redacted in the publicly released version of the logs, but whose identity has been confirmed to this committee through subpoena. But let me focus on the 2 names we know, Roger Stone and Michael Flynn. You, Roger Stone, and Michael Flynn met privately for 1 hour and 36 minutes on the evening before January 6th. What did you discuss? Trump leaned into his microphone. I don't remember the specific conversation. It was probably about general political strategy, fundraising, the state of the party, normal stuff. Normal political strategy the night before Congress was scheduled to certify the election results. The same election results you'd been claiming were stolen for 2 months. I stand by what I said then, and I'll say it now. That election was rigged. There was massive fraud. Dead people voting, machine switching votes, thousands of affidavits from witnesses. I had every right to challenge the results through legal channels, and that's what I did. Crockett closed the portfolio. I'm not here to litigate the election, Mr. Trump. I'm here to ask what you discussed with Roger Stone and Michael Flynn on January 5th. You say you don't remember the specific conversation? Let me see if I can help. She pressed a key on her laptop. A large screen behind the committee dais flickered to life. What you're about to hear is an audio recording made in the Oval Office dining room on the evening of January 5th, 2021. The recording was obtained by this committee through subpoena from the National Archives. Under the Presidential Records Act, all recordings made in the White House are federal property and subject to congressional oversight. This recording is 11 minutes long. I'm going to play the relevant sections. Trump's lead attorney shot to his feet. Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous. We were not provided this recording in advance. This is a clear violation of... Chairman Thompson spoke calmly into his microphone. Counsel, the recording was provided to President Trump's legal team 72 hours ago as required by committee rules. If you failed to review the materials provided, that is not the committee's responsibility. Congresswoman Crockett, please proceed. Crockett pressed play. The audio quality was excellent, clearly captured by professional recording equipment built into the White House infrastructure. The first voice was unmistakably Roger Stone, his distinctive gravelly tone and theatrical speaking style impossible to miss. So the question is not whether they're going to certify. They will. Pence doesn't have the balls to do what needs to be done, and even if he did, they have the votes. The question is what happens when they do certify. Do we let them walk away clean, or do we make sure they understand there are consequences? A second voice, Michael Flynn. The window is narrow. Once they certify, it's done. The media will call it settled. The Republican establishment will fold immediately. McConnell's already signaling he wants to move on. If we're going to apply pressure, it has to be tomorrow. During the certification, not after. Then Trump's voice, quieter than the other 2, but absolutely clear. So what exactly are you proposing? Stone, you're giving a speech at the Ellipse at noon. You've got 30, maybe 40,000 people coming. Most of them believe the election was stolen because you've told them it was stolen. They trust you. They're angry. You point them at the Capitol. You tell them this is their last chance to save the country. You don't tell them to be violent. You never say those words, but you make it clear that politely asking isn't going to cut it anymore. A long pause. The sound of ice clinking in a glass. Flynn, the Capitol Police have 2,000 officers max. If 10,000 people decide they want to enter that building, there's no way to stop them without live ammunition, and they're not going to use live ammunition on a crowd that size. Not on camera. The certification is in the main chamber. If the building is breached, they'll evacuate Pence and Pelosi. The certification stops. You've bought time, Stone, and once it stops, you have options. You can call for a cooling off period. You can demand a federal audit. You can claim the certification was invalid because it was conducted under duress. The legal specifics don't matter. What matters is you've broken the inevitability. You've shown that this isn't over just because they say it's over. Trump's voice again. And what about the optics? The media is going to crucify me if there's violence. Stone, the media is already crucifying you. They'll keep crucifying you whether you fight back or roll over. The difference is, if you fight, your base stays with you. You become the leader who didn't surrender. You set up the narrative for 2024. If you let them certify without a fight, you're done. You're just another president who lost and went away quietly. Another pause. 15 seconds of silence. Then Trump. What about the guard? If things get out of hand? Flynn, you're the commander-in-chief. You control the timeline on any National Guard deployment. If things get chaotic, you can wait. Let it play out for an hour, 2 hours. The longer the certification is delayed, the more leverage you have. When you do finally send the guard, you look like the voice of reason restoring order. But by then, the damage is done. The process is disrupted. And disruption is victory. Stone, the key is plausible deniability. You never say enter the building. You never say stop the certification by force. You say fight like hell and take back your country, and you let the crowd interpret that however they're going to interpret it. Legally, you're protected. Politically, you've done what needed to be done. Crockett stopped the playback. The hearing room was completely silent. Even the normal background sounds, typing from the press gallery, shuffling papers, whispered conversations, had ceased entirely. Every camera in the room was locked on Trump's face. He'd gone pale. His hands, which had been resting calmly on the table throughout the first hour of testimony, were now gripped together so tightly his knuckles had gone white. His lead attorney was frozen mid-gesture, his mouth slightly open. Crockett's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. That recording is from 9:14 p.m. on January 5th, approximately 14 hours before you took the stage at the Ellipse and told the crowd, and I quote, "We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore." You also said, "You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong." You then said, "And we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them." She looked directly at Trump. Those words match almost exactly what Roger Stone suggested you say in the meeting you just testified you don't remember. The meeting where he and Michael Flynn laid out a specific plan to use the rally crowd to disrupt the certification. The meeting where you asked about National Guard deployment timing. The meeting where you discussed plausible deniability. Trump's attorney finally found his voice. "Mr. Chairman, that recording is clearly taken out of context. A private conversation between political advisors discussing options is not the same as..." Crockett didn't look at the attorney. "I'm not finished. Mr. Trump, you testified under oath 15 minutes ago that if you met with Roger Stone on January 5th, it was a brief social conversation about general political strategy and nothing to do with January 6th. That was your testimony. Do you want to revise that statement?" Trump stared at her. 10 seconds. 15. 20. His mouth opened twice, but no words came. His attorney leaned in to whisper something, but Trump jerked away from him. The movement was sharp enough that the microphone picked up the sound of his chair scraping against the floor. "Finally, I want to invoke my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination." The hearing room erupted. Republicans shouted objections. Democrats called for order. Reporters in the press gallery were typing so fast the collective clicking sounded like heavy rain. Chairman Thompson banged the gavel repeatedly. It took nearly 3 minutes to restore quiet. Crockett waited through all of it, her expression unchanged. When the room finally settled, she continued as if there'd been no interruption. "Mr. Trump, I understand you're invoking your Fifth Amendment rights. That's your constitutional privilege. But I want to make sure the record is clear. You testified under oath that you don't remember meeting with Roger Stone on January 5th. I've now played you a recording of that meeting where you, Roger Stone, and Michael Flynn discussed a plan to use the rally crowd to disrupt the electoral certification. You've invoked the Fifth rather than explain the discrepancy." She pressed another key on her laptop. "Let me play you one more section. This is from 9:52 p.m., approximately 38 minutes into the same conversation. The recording resumed. Stone's voice, the other thing you need to understand is that once this starts, you can't stop it halfway. If the crowd enters the Capitol and you immediately condemn them and call them off, you look weak and you've accomplished nothing. You have to let it run its course. 2 hours minimum. Let the images get on television. Let Pelosi and Schumer evacuate in fear. Let the world see that your supporters are willing to fight for you. Then and only then you come out with a statement calling for peace. By that point, you're the statesman. But the message has been sent. Trump's voice. And what if someone gets hurt? What if Capitol Police start shooting? Flynn. Then they've made martyrs. And martyrs win. The important thing is you stay insulated. You're at the White House. You're watching it on television like everyone else. You can express shock. You can claim you had no idea it would go that far. But you don't stop it while it's happening. That's the key. You let it happen. 23 seconds of silence on the recording. Then Trump's voice quieter than before. Okay, I understand. Crockett stopped the playback and closed her laptop. Mr. Trump, on January 6th, the Capitol was breached at 2:13 p.m. You were informed immediately by Secret Service. Your staff began begging you to release a statement telling people to leave. Your daughter Ivanka came to the Oval Office personally to ask you to intervene. Members of Congress called the White House pleading for you to stop the violence. You did not release a video statement telling people to leave the Capitol until 4:17 p.m. That's 2 hours and 4 minutes after the breach began. 2 hours and 4 minutes, which is almost exactly the timeline Roger Stone told you to follow in the meeting you claim not to remember. She opened the black portfolio one more time and removed a document. This is the phone log from your executive assistant on January 6th. Between 2:13 p.m. and 4:17 p.m., you made 0 phone calls to law enforcement, 0 calls to the National Guard, 0 calls to the Pentagon requesting military assistance. You did, however, make 3 phone calls. The first was to Rudy Giuliani at 2:24 p.m. The second was to Senator Tommy Tuberville at 2:26 p.m., during which you asked him to delay the certification further. The third was to Roger Stone at 3:41 p.m. That call lasted 8 minutes. She looked up from the document. You called Roger Stone in the middle of the Capitol attack. 1 hour and 28 minutes after the breach began. 36 minutes before you finally told people to go home. What did you discuss in that 8-minute phone call? Trump's face had gone from pale to flushed, red spreading from his collar to his hairline. His breathing had become audible over the microphone. I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. You called the man who told you to let the attack run its course for 2 hours. You called him 88 minutes into that 2-hour window. You called him instead of calling law enforcement, the National Guard, or anyone who could actually stop the violence. What did you discuss? I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. 5 people died that day, Mr. Trump. A Capitol Police officer was beaten and suffered strokes that killed him the next day. 4 rally attendees died, including a woman who was shot by police while trying to breach the speaker's lobby. 140 police officers were injured. And you spent the afternoon on the phone with Rudy Giuliani, a senator who was actively trying to delay the certification, and Roger Stone, the man who told you to let it run its course. What did you say to Roger Stone at 3:41 p.m.? Trump's hand slammed down on the table. The sound echoed through the hearing room like a gunshot. I said I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. I don't have to answer your questions. This is a witch hunt. This entire committee is illegitimate. You've edited recordings, you've taken conversations out of context, and you're trying to criminalize political speech. I came here in good faith, and I've ambushed you with your own words. Crockett's voice didn't rise at all. Recorded in the White House. Preserved under the Presidential Records Act. Obtained through lawful subpoena. These aren't edited. They're not out of context. They're your voice on tape discussing a plan with Roger Stone and Michael Flynn the night before January 6th. And that plan played out exactly as discussed. The crowd marched to the Capitol. They breached the building. The certification was disrupted. You waited over 2 hours to call them off. And in the middle of that 2 hours, you called Roger Stone. Trump shoved his chair back and stood up. His lead attorney grabbed his arm, but Trump yanked free. This hearing is a disgrace. You're not interested in truth. You're interested in destroying your political opponents. I've answered your questions. I've sat here for over an hour listening to conspiracy theories and edited audio clips. I'm done. Chairman Thompson banged the gavel. Mr. Trump, you are under subpoena. You cannot simply leave in the middle of testimony. Watch me. Trump was already moving toward the door, his attorneys scrambling to gather papers and follow. His press secretary spoke urgently into her phone as she jogged to keep up. The security guards flanked him immediately. Jasmine Crockett's voice stopped him 3 steps from the exit. "Mr. Trump," he turned, his hand on the door handle. "You opened your testimony this morning by saying you respect the rule of law and you have nothing to hide. You said you condemned the violence immediately and told people to go home peacefully. But the recordings show you planned this with Roger Stone and Michael Flynn the night before. The phone logs show you called Roger Stone in the middle of the attack instead of calling for help. And now you're walking out rather than answering questions under oath." She stood up, her hands resting lightly on the table. "You questioned my credentials 2 weeks ago on social media. You called me a diversity hire. You said I didn't understand how the real world works. But I understand this. Leaving this hearing doesn't make these recordings go away. Invoking the Fifth Amendment doesn't erase your voice on that tape. And attacking me personally doesn't change the fact that you just refused to explain why you called Roger Stone at 3:41 p.m. on January 6th while police officers were being beaten and the Capitol was under siege." Trump's jaw worked, but no words came. The red flush had spread to his entire face. His hand was still on the door handle. "You can leave if you want. That's your choice. But the American people heard what I played today. They heard you discuss letting the attack run its course. And they heard you ask about plausible deniability. They heard Roger Stone tell you to wait 2 hours before calling for peace, and they can see from the public record that you waited 2 hours and 4 minutes. Walking out of this hearing doesn't change any of that." For 5 full seconds, Trump stood frozen in the doorway. Then he jerked the door open and walked through it, his attorneys and security trailing behind him like the wake of a boat. The door swung shut with a heavy thud that echoed through the completely silent hearing room. Chairman Thompson waited 10 seconds before speaking into his microphone. "The committee will take a 30-minute recess. Congresswoman Crockett, please submit the recordings and phone logs to the official record." "Yes, Mr. Chairman." Crockett sat back down and opened her laptop. The screen behind her still showed the timestamp of the Roger Stone recording, 9:52:34 p.m., January 5th, 2021. By the time the hearing reconvened 30 minutes later, the video clip of Trump walking out had been viewed 12 million times on social media. The audio of Roger Stone saying, "You have to let it run its course," was trending worldwide, and 3 former federal prosecutors had already gone on television to say that the recordings Crockett had played constituted clear evidence of conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. The afternoon session continued without Trump. The committee called 3 additional witnesses: a Secret Service agent who confirmed the phone logs, a White House staff member who testified about Trump's refusal to release a statement during the attack, and a National Guard officer who confirmed that requests for military assistance were delayed for hours despite the escalating violence. Jasmine Crockett did not ask any questions during the afternoon session.